Hey Bruce, it's good to see you again.
You too, Collin. I think you've had your ostomy longer than I have.
I got my ostomy in 2014.
Yeah.
So I actually just celebrated my 10-year stomaversary, as some of us like to call it. So I'm a seasoned veteran at this point. But when did you get yours?
So I got mine in 2019, and I had a temporary one with first surgery so they could prepare me for radiation and chemo, and then I got the final one in November, the end of the year.
So you've had two actual separate ostomies then, huh?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. What was the reason for needing the ostomy in your case?
Well, because the tumor that I had, it was a stage 3C tumor locked in my pelvis, and they said that with the radiation, it was just going to be so damaging down there and so painful that if I was having bowel movements at the same time, it'd be just a bad experience.
Right.
And so the temporary ostomy was set up to sort of reroute the plumbing for
Gotcha.
for the radiation. And then it just turned out that it just needed to become a permanent one at the end of the whole process. And my dad had one, so I was actually familiar with it.
Okay.
Yes.
So you kind of knew the drill a little bit going into it.
I did, yeah. So I wasn't as, freaked out at all.
Yeah, I mean, so I have my ostomy because of ulcerative colitis, and my story and my situation is pretty different than yours in that, I was diagnosed at 21 and I had never had any issues leading up to that point. And I was only sick for really 8 months, but it was a very severe onset and like a very steep drop off in terms of my health and how everything was going. Terrible, terrible pain. And the ostomy, I didn't know a whole lot about ostomies. I didn't know anything about ostomies going into having ulcerative colitis. And, I really didn't start learning about ostomies until I needed one myself. Mm-hmm. And so that was pretty scary. Not having any context and, all the questions that come up with the uncertainty of, just the unknown, really. And, in hindsight, I wish I could have gone back and talked to myself and put my mind at ease a little bit, because life has been, much better than I anticipated it being when I first got my ostomy, like waking up from the hospital and seeing this appliance. It's pretty freaky, to say the least. But 10 years in now, and I'm very happy with the way things have played out, and it's been a pretty wonderful experience, all things considered, by comparison with colitis. That's for sure.
Well, sure, yeah, and I would think other people that are very active and like to run like you do would probably love to know that how easy it's actually been for you, based on the circumstances, right? I mean, if you have to have a bag, I mean, I imagine some people might think, oh my gosh, my running days are over, my weightlifting days are over.
Yeah.
But you're sort of a testament to that, aren't you?
Yeah. My life leading up to getting sick and even after having the illness and surgeries has always been very much revolved around being active. Like you mentioned, I'm an avid runner, and when I was diagnosed, I was a collegiate athlete, and so that was really important to me. And I had dreams of being a professional one day, and getting sick and having the surgeries. My biggest concern was that I wasn't going to be able to do those things again, and that was like so deeply part of my identity. I think those fears were warranted at the time, just with how little I knew. But like I mentioned, having had the ostomy now, there hasn't been any challenges that I haven't been able to find a way around. Like, I don't want to say that having an ostomy has just been like smooth sailing and like, of course there's challenges that come up, but I run marathons. I'm still really competitive. I'm one of the most physically active people that you can imagine. And, my ostomy was a big part of what facilitated my ability to continue doing these things. Because when I was sick, there was just no way that I was going to be, I was bedridden. I was anemic. I was in chronic and horrible pain. I was, it was a totally different life. And so my ostomy really did give me my life back, but it took some time before I realized that. It was 3 or 4 months in the beginning. I really struggled, and it took me, about that long to start to reframe and reconceptualize what the ostomy was, and also learn enough about, what appliances work for me and what my setup needed to be to have the outcome. I'm curious about your experience.
What I didn't realize was how important finding the right pouching system was. Getting leaks is not a great feeling.
No, it is not.
Yeah, I mean, and it can be embarrassing, and it's just such a private, personal thing, that you want to make sure that you're locked down. And I was in pretty good shape after my temporary ostomy surgery. But then my second surgery, the final one, they did the incision in the exact same spot as the first incision, and it created a bit of a valley.
Mm.
And so I was wearing a flat bag, and we think that the flat bag was causing some of the waste to get underneath the bag and travel towards my incision. It was because there was a valley down there, and I didn't have a flat landing spot. And so a stoma nurse suggested that I try Convexity. So when I put the Convexity on, I was like, wait a minute, this just seems counterintuitive to me, right? Because the way the Convexity works, you know, and with the videos I watched at first with some companies, I thought that maybe it's supposed to be for somebody that maybe has sort of a larger girth than I have, right?
Sure,
So
yeah.
it's counterintuitive in some ways. But I tried it because, I needed to find a solution. And it was fantastic because it was described to me that it pushes down on the stoma to push it back out. And it seemed to me as I started reasoning it, why wouldn't anybody want to do that? Even if you have a stoma that's already sort of out, why not push it out even more?
Right.
Just to give you more protection, right?
Yeah.
But yet if you have a stoma that's sort of peeking down a little bit and like a turtle kind of hiding his head sometime, then it's really wonderful, I would think, for somebody like that to push the head back out.
Sure.
Right? But it seemed to me as I started getting comfortable with the Convexity, I was like, why doesn't everybody use a Convexity?
Right.
It just seemed like the way to go.
It's a great point, though, that you have kind of gotten to where, it's really important to kind of advocate for yourself and be your own like scientist. The way that I like to think about it, where my mindset really started to change was when I kind of took ownership in it. And I think part of that is accepting like, hey, I have this, I can't change that. So now what can I do to make this as good as possible? I took the approach of I just tried everything that I could, and I had this wild spreadsheet with a rank order system of like what worked, what didn't.
Nice.
And the more I kind of dove into that process, the more I felt like empowered, and I realized that not all appliances are the same for each person. And I kind of landed in the same spot as you, where the soft convex Hollister appliances really stood out as the one that was the most comfortable for me. It gave me the most flexibility, being super active, but it was giving me the wear time that I needed, that I need to feel comfortable in my day to day. I aim for 3 to 4 days. I try to keep the skin healthy, but the soft convex appliances that Hollister have been the main product that I've used since at least 7 or 8 years now. Those first 2 years were kind of my testing phase, and now I still try other things when I get my hands on it, but I just find myself coming back to this because it works so well. And I haven't had any skin issues really to speak of, occasionally little stuff, but it's always manageable. And a lot of that just comes from the trial and error that came during that period when I was learning. And, I think that there's something to be said about being curious of your situation to, explore what's out there, and realizing that even if something's working okay, there might be something out there that can work even better. And, anybody that may watch this conversation between us in the future, I would encourage them to go out and try some of those other things, because there's a lot of people who spend a lot of time, very intelligent people put a lot of time into developing these things to make our lives better, and it's just a matter of us finding those things.
And what a great revelation it was for me when I found out that you could call up a company and say, call up Hollister and say, do you guys have some samples? And then lo and behold, they're happy to ship you some samples. And
Right.
so it gave me a great opportunity to move from a flat to a Convexity and try it before having to commit the funds to buying a full set.
I use a 2-piece appliance, and there's 1 or 2-piece appliances. I'm preferential to the 2-piece because I like the ability to adjust the orientation of the bag, so I can have it sideways or straight down depending on what I'm doing and like the kind of garments I'm wearing. But a lot of people use 1-piece appliances. I'm curious which appliance you prefer. Is it 1-piece or 2-piece, and what the rationale for that would be?
That's a great question, because I actually did start out with 1-piece, and I was using one, and I wasn't sure what to expect. You kind of get used to something.
Yeah.
I was kind of used to the 1-piece. I'm like, well, I don't know if I should try a 2-piece, but I wanted to try it because, again, like you, I wanted to have the ability to maybe click it and turn it, from an orientation standpoint, depending upon, if I was working out, maybe I wanted to just kind of be above the shorts. So I thought I'd give it a try. And I ended up liking it much better for me, for a lot of the same reasons you say. But also what I liked about it was I felt like I could put the one piece on, and with the convexity sort of pushing down, I felt like I could just sort of, either with my finger or with a Q-tip or something, just sort of work around the stoma and press everything down into place on top of the barrier ring.
Okay.
To just make sure I was really getting
Make
it
sure
locked down.
that bond with the adhesive in the skin really like has a chance to cure.
Yeah, because with the one piece, you got to kind of poke through the bag to kind of go around to do that. But
Yeah.
with the two piece, I could certainly get right on the product and move it around and make sure I had a nice, good seal. And then put the bag on top of that. So I really am a big fan of the two piece now.
Yeah, I another aspect of the two piece that I love is that Hollister, the way they make it is they've got the base plate, which is the adhesive portion that attaches to the body, and then there's the bag that attaches there. But between them, there's this like accordion type of like floating flange. So there's these two pieces that kind of can operate independently, and moving around as much as I do at like yoga, running, swimming, biking, all of these things, having those two pieces independently be able to move from one another, I find that it allows me to be a little bit more flexible, and it's less noticeable, especially with the soft convexity, because I've used firm convexity for a long time, but switched over to soft because it increased the comfort, and I'd say decreased the noticeability throughout the day. And like, so the convexity coupled with the floating flange, I don't know that I found something that feels more comfortable, but also has that aspect of the convexity where my stoma is really flush to my skin, and so I need something kind of pushing that skin in around, because when it's active, if it goes in under the adhesive level, it can cause those leaks. But this particular setup with those two aspects combined seems to just be kind of my sweet spot.
I go to the gym and I work out, and I do Camp Gladiator, which is sort of like a CrossFit outdoors, and you're up and down a lot, and you're really moving, and you're hitting dumbbells, and and you're doing some running in place, and but a lot of movement like you. And so I feel like that specific product that you're referring to from Hollister really gives a lot of flexibility when you're moving around. I love that part of it too, and then that accordion thing, I think, does help you sort of feel like you can move around a little bit better. So yeah, I mean, I think that if I was to be in a position where I was again debating between a one piece and a two piece, knowing what I know now, I'd absolutely continue to stick with the two piece.
Yeah,
It's a much better way to go.
I'm very much the same, but to each their own. Like I said earlier, it's like you got to try what's out there.
What works best for you.
You never know, but it's worth trying out some of these other things that are out there, because you never know. Everyone's bodies are a little different, and the divots in your skin are different spots than the divots in mine. So sure.
But I'm totally with you on the convexity. I mean,
Yeah.
in that just feels like this has got to be a way to go. It just feels like there's so much upside to it.
At this point, it's been long enough that I've been using it. I can't even remember exactly what the flats were like. I just remember getting leaks all the time, and then I switched to convexity, and then I stopped getting them. So it's like, all right, well, for me, I've solved that problem, and move on to the next.
Awesome, that's great.